Hi there everyone. So today I'd like to show you a tutorial on how to bring your one-shot color narrowband images through filters such as my own L-Extreme or L-Enhance filters. There's many of these available. How to bring those particular images from looking kind of just like salmon pink and reds into a Hubble style palette. And it should be quite easy to follow along with. I'm going to be using recently taken data through my 2600MC Pro an Optolong L-Extreme filter. It's not particularly great data because it's got a very short integration time. It's only 17 5-minute shots. But hopefully it should be good enough to show you what I'm talking about, and you can pause this video and try and follow along with your own data perhaps. So there's a couple of prerequisites that you'll need to follow along with this tutorial, and that's going to be that you will need the Easy Processing Suite installed. And you'll also need to have StarNet++ installed and working with your PixInsight. So with that said, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is we're going to crop this image. So as usual, I'll apply an SDF so I can actually see what the data looks like while leaving it in a linear state. And as usual, it's going to come up quite green to begin with. But anyway, so we're going to use a dynamic crop tool and just bring the edges in just a touch. This is just to get rid of any stacking artifacts that may be present. And that should do. We don't need to be too conservative with this because it's just a tutorial. Okay, that's done. Now, before we pass this tool on into the Easy Processing Suite's Easy Denoise script, it does require that you provide it with color calibrated data. So we're going to run through a full color calibration just using the automatic settings though, before we pass it on to that tool. So the first thing we want to go to do is color calibration and background neutralization. Now you'll note I'm just going to leave everything totally standard and just drag and drop that over. And each time I will apply a new SDF just to show you the difference that it's made. You don't have to do this. You can just trust that the tool is going to be working. But for the sake of just showing it visually, I'll keep doing that on this video. So the next thing after the background neutralization is going to be a color calibration itself. Again, all standard settings, just drag and drop. It's worth mentioning, I guess, at times, some of these processes in PixInsight, even with quite a fast computer, are going to take quite a long time. So I'm obviously not going to expect you guys to sit through that. I'll just fast forward through. So if you see a progress bar skip along, then you know that's what's happened. I'm not actually processing on a supercomputer. Okay, the next thing. So we're going to need to go to noise reduction and get rid of all this green using SCNR, subtractive chrominance noise reduction. Again, everything's standard, just drag and drop. We don't want to overcomplicate this. So now before we move on and pass this data on to the next tool, we can see that there's a gradient. Hopefully you can see that on your screen, that it's lighter on the left hand side and darker on the right. Now I'm going to try and deal with that using dynamic background extraction. I'm going to leave everything standard. The correction that we're going to want to apply would be a subtraction, and for the purposes of this, I'm going to discard the background model. You may want to leave that unticked so that you can actually see perhaps any other problems that occur. You can sometimes see that by seeing the background model that it generates if you're having trouble extracting out any gradients. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and place some sample points. You don't have to be massively careful with this, just as long as you're not selecting bright stars, and in particular bright parts of nebula, which could confuse it into thinking that that is also part of the background, which is clearly not. I suppose it's worth mentioning the effect that that could have as well, and that's that it'd apply an overcorrection in those areas, which would be an erroneous one as well. Okay, so I think that's about okay for that last quadrant. Maybe a few more sample points. And yeah, I'm going to say that that's fine for the purpose of this. I'm going to go ahead, drag and drop. We'll apply an SDF to this new image. And I'd say that largely that's got rid of the gradient, and I'm happy to continue on with processing now at that. So I'll close the dynamic background extraction, and I'm actually going to close this first initial image because we're not going to be using that any longer for this. All right, so the next stage of the tutorial is going to require you to open up your scripts, go to the Easy Processing Suite, and select Easy Denoise. It's going to warn you that it's under heavy development. It could cause your PC to crash, and it certainly could, but I've had no problems thus far. So you're going to want to, in this top drop down, the first thing is select the image that we're working on. I've kept everything neat now, so there's only one image to select, which is this one. Now, without getting too in depth with this, basically, if you just hit Run Easy Denoise, in most cases, it's going to work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And while that's processing, because this one actually does take quite a while, I'll just skip ahead for you guys at home. Okay, so we're above 10 minutes later now, and that process has finally finished. One thing I'll do now to prevent that taking as long in the future will be to actually resample this image before moving on with this tutorial. I wouldn't recommend you probably do this with your own images at home because you're going to want the absolute maximum quality. Maybe you could resample right before saving, but just to make the rest of the processes go faster, I'm going to do it now. So that's going to be geometry and resample for anybody who wishes to know about this. We obviously want the correct image selected, and I'm just going to resample to 50% for this, which should make processes take a quarter as long total. Okay, now that's done. I'll just close the resample box. I can close these extra masks that it's generated just to get rid of any clutter from the screen. And it's actually done a beautiful job of denoising the image while leaving it still in a linear state, which is perfect. But as it happens right now, we're actually going to take this image from the linear phase into non-linear, and we're going to use the Easy Processing script again for this. So if we just go to Easy Processing Suite and Easy Soft Stretch, again there'll be another warning telling you it could crash. But we need to select the right image again, so there's only one on my screen. You can reset these settings back to the standard values. I actually turned these down for processing another image where I wanted a slightly more gentle stretch, but for the sake of this and going with everything basically at default values as much as possible, we'll just run it fully reset, and we'll run that now. Fortunately, that one doesn't take too long to perform. And this is now a non-linear image. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to actually run StarNet++. You can find this process, all processors, down in the S's. Here you go, StarNet. Now we do want to tick create a star mask because we're actually going to use that for our star image. And this is as simple as just drag and drop again. Leave it on the same standard stride setting. No need to mess with that. And again, I'll just come back to you in a moment once this is done processing. All right, that one didn't take too long at all, thankfully. Probably due to the resample, but we can now close StarNet, and what you'll be left with is a starless image and one that contains all your stars. Hopefully it should have done as good a job as this one has, which is almost perfect. And what we can now move on to doing is working on this starless image by breaking it up into its component parts to begin with. So to do that, we're going to need to make sure we have this image selected, go to Process, Channel Management, and Channel Extraction. We want to name our channels real quickly. Very, very simple naming convention. R, G, and B, because I want very short identifiers. Reduces some visual clutter. Make sure you're in the RGB space and just drag and drop that on the image. Okay, we can close that down. I'm actually going to minimize blue because it's quite a noisy channel in this image, whereas green, hopefully it's apparent for you on this recording, has considerably less noise while containing all the same data and some more really. So again, minimizing blue, we're not going to be using that, but I'll just move it off to one side. So we're going to be mainly focusing on this red and green images. Now you might be wondering, what about using a third channel for when we recombine things? And that's what we're about to do right now. So I'm going to take this red image, put it somewhere where I can keep an eye on it, move my green image to one side, and just using curves while selecting the green image and a live preview, I want to stretch the green until it has a similar brightness to this red. And to perform this, I'm literally just going to drag this center point upwards. So you can hopefully see it's starting to get close to matching the brightness now. We don't need to go quite all the way. And then I'm going to drop the background brightness to again match the red channel. And to do that, we're going to try and drag this curve into a gentle S. Hopefully that is showing for you guys at home. But that's now got a fairly similar background level to this red image, and that's perfect for what we want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and now reset the tool and close it. We can also get rid of this preview. So now to make the third image, which we're actually going to use in this case as a green channel, green will become blue and red will still remain as red, and naturally also our luminance image in this case. We're actually going to use a little bit of pixel math, which is a very simple expression, so you'll find that here, process, pixel math, and open that up. Now, because we've got very simple and short identifiers, just R and G, it's going to be as simple as this. So R times 0.6 plus G times 0.4. So that's going to give us an image containing 60% of the red channel, 40% of the green channel, and it'll be a nice blend between the two to use in the actual green channel on the recombine. Now we need to set a new destination of create a new image. You can leave an auto identifier, but we don't want it to replace either of these. It's very important. Go ahead and apply that. And as you can see, the pixel math is now finished, and we're left with a new image. So we're actually going to change the identifier on green now. And just for the sake of keeping things kind of easy to understand in the next part of recombining the image, I'm actually going to rename this to blue. So now green is going to become blue. I'll just have to close this. I shouldn't really have left that one open. All right, identifier B and identifier. Now that we've freed up G, because we're going to use this in the green channel, we'll just call it G. All right, so we're left with three separate images now, and we can actually begin to recombine these using the Lrgb combination tool. I've actually got a shortcut to it right here, so I'm just going to use that. So in the place of L, we're going to use red, because I want that to actually be our luminance image. It's very low noise and it looks beautiful. The red channel is going to be red. The green channel, we're actually going to use the freshly created pixel math green. And the blue channel, we're going to use the natural, what was the green channel. Sorry if this is getting confusing, but if you've done it a few times, it'll start to make sense. We are going to apply some chrominance noise reduction and just go ahead, and apply that globally. And this should generate us now an almost Hubble-esque image right from the get-go, rather than just those salmon-y images that you often find you get with just a basic process. Kind of like the one that we were working on here in this starless form. So you're probably going to notice there's not nearly enough blue in this, and the way we're going to deal with that is just by selecting it and opening the curves tool. Now you probably note that you can select individual RGB channels, and that's exactly what we're going to be manipulating to bring those blues up. So I'm going to select the blue channel, again drag the midpoint of this slider and just drag it up. Sorry, I need a preview open. And so we're making the background blue, but if we just drag this again into an S, you'll notice the background values go back towards looking more neutral and black, whereas the core, where it should be turning blue, is actually doing so. And we're leaving this region of the image, hopefully that's apparent for you at home, largely untouched, without the use of any mask and things like that, which they take extra time. But by all means, you should feel free to perform that if you're confident with masking. That actually would be a better way to do this, but this is quite a rapid way to do it. So I'm satisfied that that's brought the blues up quite nicely for a single pass. I'm going to go ahead and apply that and reset the tool. So analyzing it again, I'd say that this is too yellow and I like to see a more reddish tinge. So I'm going to go to the red channel now and gently bring that up a little. Again, while bringing it into an ever so slight S. And apply that. I'm satisfied there. Reset the tool again. And now the background's looking quite green. So we're going to bring likely down the greens to deal with that a little bit. You see from naturally left alone there to just an ever so slight reduction, and all the colors change quite dramatically. So you need to be careful with this that you don't overdo it. But I'm happy at that. And I think a final touch up on those blues. Again, just drag it upwards because I want them to increase. Again, so if you drag things up, it'll increase the value. Down, it'll decrease it. So get the blues somewhere where I want them, around about there. I feel looks quite nice. And just drag it into that very gentle S again. Okay. For the sake of perfectionism, I think, in terms of my eye, I'm going to actually bring the reds up again, just an ever so slight touch. Again, you can preview this, what effect it's had back and forth. No, I'll leave it as it was. Okay, so you can hopefully see now that we've got quite a nice, colourful, yet slightly muted, starless, Hubble-esque image. So again, we could use curves to bring this saturation up, just using the saturation tool on the end. Again, this works just like all the others. Dragged upwards, it'll give you a brighter, in this case, more saturated value. And that's perfect. So yeah, around about there looks great. Close the tool. I'm actually going to pass this through a color calibration before continuing. Just to make sure things are aligned nicely. And yeah, I'd say that is an improvement. So I'm actually going to go with that, even though it's took it back to slightly more yellowish. The color calibration and the subsequent SCNR that I did afterwards have taken this into quite a nice looking state, I would say. By all means, this is just, I suppose when you're processing in Hubble colors, or Hubble-esque colors in this case, since it's just a bicolor image, it's really down to you, the processor, as to what you want to settle on and what colors you find appealing. So, I mean, you might like this one better. I happen to like this one better, and that's all fine. It's just artist's choice, if you like, because at this point, I suppose, in processing, it does just become more art. So now we're left with a nice colored image there. The last thing we're going to want to do is you could save this out as is, by all means. Lots of people like starless images, but I'd like to put the stars back in. But I don't want them to overwhelm the image. And I also know that some of them look ever so slightly green. So I'm just going to pass SCNR over this real quick. Sorry if I'm rambling a little bit of this. It's kind of a late night tutorial and I really should be in bed, but I just thought I'd make this as I want to keep content coming out for you guys, as you've all been so supportive. And I thought this was worth sharing. So yeah, I think the SCNR has had a change. Very subtle. But yeah, before I put these stars back in, there's one more tool that we can use as a really lovely effect, especially on a narrowband image where you don't really want to swamp the image with big bright stars. So we're going to go to process and use morphology now. So morphological transformation. Because this is already going to act as just a star image, we don't need to create a mask for this. At one value, which is full strength for one pass, I think it'll probably be a little bit strong. So we're just going to turn that down to 0.8 and just drag and drop. And hopefully you can see it looks like someone's turned the lights out on most of those stars. They're still visible, but they're greatly diminished and they're certainly not going to dominate the image anymore. So back to identifiers now before we move on to the last phase of this image. So this one's currently image 21. It's just where we currently are at this point in processing. I'm just going to change the identifier to starless to keep things nice and simple. And this one that's created a star mask, I'm going to change that to just stars because we're going to be using pixel math again. And I can never be bothered typing out all this massive long identifier when I could just change the identifier to something more suitable for the purpose. So without messing around too much more, we're just going to go now process and pixel math. We can clear this previous expression. And this is a very simple expression. It's just going to be starless plus stars. An auto identifier is fine as long as it's going to create a new image. Oops, I always get this the wrong way around. I'm going to apply that, and hopefully you should see now it's created a lovely image with the stars put back in, not dominating it. I'll just make this a little bigger. Yeah, the stars definitely aren't dominating this image. We've got these beautiful Hubble colors coming through from just what was initially a bicolor image. This is the same data as I used when I made my recent video photographing the Rosette Nebula, taken on a half moon night, or it might have even been more illuminated than that. But yeah, it's really limited data, but we've got a fantastic result just from using these few basic tools that really don't take much installing. But the power that they give you over the image is not really to be underestimated in any way. I'd say that that's certainly a finer result than I got first time around with processing. So yeah, without any more messing around, I guess, because as I mentioned earlier, it's all down to you, what you actually want to settle on. I think I'll call that finished for this tutorial, and hopefully you're able to follow along with that at home and get some use from it, maybe pick up a few tips. And if it was useful and you liked it, please consider leaving a like, commenting, subscribing. It all really helps this little channel of mine to grow, which is ideally what I'd like to do because I'm really enjoying making these videos for everyone. So yeah, thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Cheers.